Hi, I'm Jennifer Long. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, and this is Censorship in Film History. As far back as 1896, at the beginning of motion pictures, with Edison's short, The Kiss, religious groups and conservatives have been screaming for censorship. In 1907, licensing began when Chicago required exhibitors to secure permits to show films from the chief of police. The exhibition of obscene and immoral pictures was prohibited. Just having the potential to show images that some Americans might find offensive or immoral was enough to deny motion pictures of any constitutional protection. The conservatives were especially vexed by female sexuality, while filmmakers continued to make it central to their stories. The portrayal of vice and immorality seemed well on its way to becoming a multi-million-dollar business. Storylines about white slavery and the darker side of sexuality, with Theda Bara playing a vamp and a nymphomaniac, drove suppression groups to protest, but the demand of films to be produced quickly is what steered filmmakers back to a more Victorian moral code by adapting existing plays, novels, and short stories. By 1921, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Kansas, Maryland, and New York had established censorship boards to ensure that films exhibited within their borders met the moral standards established by state legislatures. There was no consistency. Some states might alter or prohibit a film, while other states played it unedited. Due to Hollywood's tarnished public image, censorship campaigns were intensified. To curb pro-censorship movements, the majors in Hollywood formed a trade association called the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America, headed by William Hayes. Many studio heads felt the restrictions were only the opinions of minority, and thus did not comply. In 1927, Hayes formed the Studio Relations Committee, and a code to govern the making of talking, synchronized, and silent motion pictures was drafted. In 1930, it was published as the Production Code, or Hayes Code, and was adopted by the MPPDA after negotiations. In 1934, Joseph Breen became head of the Production Code Authority. Finally, working alongside the newly formed Catholic Legion of Decency, censorship rules were being followed. In 1945, Hayes resigns and Eric Johnston takes over and renames the MPPDA the Motion Picture Association of America, or MPAA. Things change after U.S. versus Paramount and the Consent Decree of 1948. Without the vertical integration of the studio majors, it was more difficult to enforce compliance. Continued court cases ruled state censorship boards unconstitutional, and little by little, filmmakers were able to express their art form closer to the way they intended. Both the Legion of Decency and the MPAA eventually adopted age-based rating systems, leading us to what we now use, only marginally different than the original 1968 ratings. The last major change was in 1990 when they began using NC-17 instead of X, since it was taken over by the porn industry. To be given an NC-17 is known as the box office kiss of death, since many theaters and retailers will not allow it. I believe it is time again for a change. This inconsistent, non-standardized rating system representing the views of the few should not be forced on the masses, and as history will continue to repeat itself, boundaries will always be pushed and manipulated until such a change comes.
If they did rate a film, like ours, PG-13, that they would hear from pressure groups. They would start getting calls, they would start getting letters. And I found this really revealing. It didn't seem so much that it's about representing the majority opinion of America. It seems more about bowing to pressure.
Let's go!